Imagine that you are amazingly accomplished in your career and you're comfortable doing presentations in the boardroom. Heck, you're happy to get on a stage and speak to a group, and you decide you're going to move your business online. You're going to become an entrepreneur. It's going to be easy, right? Well, I'm sorry to say you may be in for a bit of a shock. A lot of women find that when they transition from their career into being an entrepreneur and the online space, suddenly they have all kinds of nerves putting themselves out there that they did not expect. Well, stick around because today we're going to be talking about how to transition from that corporate world to the online world and be brave enough to put yourself out there. Welcome to Show Up and Be Seen. I'm Valerie McTavish, sharing insights and inspirations to help you get visible so that you can increase your impact and grow your business. Joining me on the show today is Colleen Jeffs, and she is running an amazing Facebook group. She's doing amazing work working with coaches and consultants, helping them grow their online business. And she knows from her own experience what it's like to make that transition from corporate to the online space. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Colleen, tell me a little bit about this process, going from being accomplished in the corporate world to, you know, heading out on your own as an entrepreneur. What did you discover about visibility? What did you discover about putting yourself out there?
Well, that's a really good question. I didn't realize that I would have to be my own biggest cheerleader in a way that I have to be. So I have to be seen. I have to be out there all the time. I have to be promoting myself. And for someone who's introverted like I am, it's not natural for me to go and tell everybody how wonderful I am and about all the wonderful things that I'm doing. So that transition from the corporate world was very different in that I had to I had to go and find people in different places and tell them all about what I did because no one knew who I was. I wasn't established like I was in the corporate world, and so learning how to do that in a non-spammy way. I'm a Kiwi. I'm a New Zealander, so we're very reserved. Not used to telling people all about myself and how great I am and all the wonderful things that I'm doing was very unnatural for me. But I had to learn that to be able to reach the right people. So that was difficult in itself. But it's one of those things that you learn over time that with testing and tweaking that, you're going to have to do a little bit more than what you actually thought you did. So that experience was a little bit of a challenge, but I learned from some amazing mentors and I learned what I needed to do, and I just decided that I was going to do it and I wanted to make it work, and so I just had to do it.
Well, let's break down that fear that came up when you transitioned from the corporate world into the online space. I think what happens for a lot of people is, the corporate world is kind of like a container. There's
Mm.
sort of this expected behavior that happens in the corporate world, and everyone knows what's supposed to go on there. But you get to the online space, and people are using it for different reasons. And that creates this kind of discomfort about presenting yourself as an entrepreneur when you've got your great aunt or your best friend from high school who's just in there sharing pictures of their lunch or their dog.
Right, right. It is difficult because I use so Facebook is my platform of choice, and I'm very comfortable on Facebook. But I had a personal profile where I was sharing about my life and my family and my traveling and all of that kind of stuff. So when I started using it to talk about my business, it was really difficult because I had all of my cousins and my friends and people from the corporate world watching me, and we were connected that way as friends. So for them to see me as an entrepreneur now was very different, and that's scary making that change to say I'm going to be someone else now, not the person that as the personal friend and colleague, but now I'm doing something else. And I think there's a real fear there about being judged. Where people feel like I don't know if I can do this because I've got a mix of people that I want to talk to, so making that transition was really difficult. And being on LinkedIn, that was another platform that I used a lot in the corporate world. That was all about recruiters and CEOs and directors and professional people that I connected with. So to then be someone else and say, I'm going to be doing this now was really difficult. So the change from being the corporate person to now I'm an entrepreneur was a bit of a mental shift, but I knew I had to make that to be able to be successful. And so I just completely switched out I made a mental shift to just change from being the personal friend colleague to now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm just going to deal with it. And that was difficult in itself. But I think once you make that mental shift, then people will either continue to follow you or not. And that's okay. That's all part of the journey.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's so true. I certainly dealt with that myself where really the thought that was coming to my head was all of these people who know me as this person are going to think, who does she think she is
Mm,
doing this other thing now?
yeah,
Right? And
totally.
the mental shift for me was, hey, wake up. They don't really care what you're doing now. If they're interested, they'll pay attention. If they're not, they'll stop following you. And that's okay. We all make changes in life. So for you, what did that mental shift sound like? What were you telling yourself in order to kind of turn off the fear of judgment and just move forward with your business?
Well, I think the toughest one was LinkedIn because it was so professional and that connected me to my old revenue stream, if you like. So I had a lot of recruiters following me. I had a lot of like business people following me who could give me work as a project manager, which is what I did before. And I thought, if I now start talking about my entrepreneurial side, they're going to think exactly what you said. Who are you to do that? What experience do you have? And I knew that if I moved into that space, it would then cut off any revenue opportunities that I had in my old life. And the question that I ask myself is, what is the alternative? If you don't do this, what is the alternative? And the alternative was to stay in that corporate life. And I didn't want to do that. I knew I wanted to really impact more people and do things that really mattered to me. And that meant leaving that corporate life. So I had to be brave and step up and make that step forward and disconnect from that previous life and that previous revenue stream where I was safe and it was okay to be, the project manager and to step into that new role of being the entrepreneur. And so that's the question that I always ask myself when I feel uncomfortable. What is the alternative if you don't do that? And I know I needed to leave that corporate life and step into the shoes of someone else who was going to help other people and impact other people to make money online and create the freedom that they're looking for. And I wanted that for myself as well. So I knew I needed to set the example and do that. And that's what I did. And so that's the question that I ask, what is the alternative? And that always spurs me into action to do the uncomfortable and do what I need to be successful.
And I think that that is so important to consider because so often, and you've probably seen this too, you see people who are trying to keep one foot on in each place, right? They're like not completely closing the door on their corporate past and that old revenue stream, but they're still trying to kind of put themselves out there as an entrepreneur and test the waters there. And this is a real, for the way I see it, can be a real danger zone because it gives you that sort of safety net where you're saying, the question is, what's the alternative? If the answer isn't scary enough, then it might not be enough to push you forward to actually go for it as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. And then they're kind of in limbo, aren't they? Where they're feeling like I'm trying to serve these people, my old corporate people, but I really want to do this and this is where my heart is. But if you're not going to step into the shoes of that person, then you're always going to be in limbo. And for me, that's very uncomfortable. I tend to move towards being brave and doing the thing that I really know I need to do so that I don't stay in limbo and in that space where I'm, not really feeling I'm not really feeling it. And that was exactly how I was feeling in the corporate world. I just knew it wasn't me anymore. And it was painful for me to stay there. So I needed to make that shift. And
Right.
yeah, but you're so right. When you have one foot in each camp, it's really hard.
Yeah. So make the move over to the other camp and be brave, put yourself out there. And just to kind of encourage people, tell us what that meant for you when you actually made that shift, when you actually committed to doing the uncomfortable thing and showing up for your business. What kind of results did you get once you were willing to do that?
Well, I thought it would be really easy because in the corporate world, I was an accomplished project manager. I'd climbed the corporate ladder, and it really wasn't that hard to do that. I'm very ambitious, and I just do what I need to do. But in the online space, I thought I'm a smart person. I've been to university, I've had great jobs, I've worked with CEOs. I thought I could take the learnings that I had in the corporate world and just apply them in the online space, but that wasn't so. And so I talk about eating humble pie. I've definitely had my share of eating humble pie. And so the things that I thought would work in the online space didn't work. I thought that I could just work it out on my own, but that wasn't the case. I really had to reach out and get mentors to help me, and I didn't think that I would need that. So that was very humbling to learn that in the online space, it's not like you can take transferable skills from the corporate world and apply them. And I thought, I'm a relatively smart woman, I can do this. But that wasn't the case. I needed to learn different ways of doing things and different ways of being seen and different ways of presenting. Like in the corporate world, I was used to talking a certain way. In the online space, it's very different. And like my mother would be horrified that I start sentences with and, and my written text. But in the online space, you can do that. So I had to unlearn things that I used in the online world and just relearn, new things in the online space, and really make that work. And so I think getting mentors to help me do that was a huge shift. And I needed to kind of unlearn corporate and learn online marketing in a different way, and that was hard, but it took me some time, and I finally got it.
And what about that shift from having meetings face to face or even on Zoom to going live, which you do all the time in your Facebook group, going live and, not knowing if anyone's ever going to see it, not, necessarily seeing the numbers go up of people watching right now. How do you get through that mentally when you were used to having real live human beings receiving your presentations?
That's tough actually, because it's not natural to talk to a camera when you're not getting that feedback back and forth. And so presenting in corporate is quite different. Like you're sitting in a room full of people, or even if you're on camera, you can normally see people looking at you, looking back at you. But when you're doing a live in a group, it's really hard, that whole bit where you press live and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and you know that you have to be on because you know that there's going to be some image of you finally come up on screen. And that's daunting in itself. And then when you get on your live and people don't join straight away, that can be hard because you feel like no one is watching you and you're not getting the feedback. It is a very unnatural thing, but the way that I do it now, I just imagine that I am talking to a room full of people, and that helps me just present in a way that's more comfortable, and also understand that people are going to see the replay. So whether people come on your live or not, it doesn't matter. You still have to be presenting as if you are talking to a room full of people, because people will see the replay and then they will get that version of you. And it's really about the connections that you make. So just imagine that you are presenting to a bunch of people who are talking to you anyway, and even though you're talking to a camera, you're not, and just imagine the people on the replay seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had speakers come through my video marketing mastery program, and it's the same thing for them. They're used to the energy that they get from the crowd, right?
Mm,
They're used to having that reaction. They tell a
yes.
joke, they hear a laugh, right? If they have a dramatic pause, they can hear the breathing. And so it really helps to move them along, and they just freeze up in front of the camera. And I say the exact same thing to them, which is you have to imagine that audience there. You have to build in the time for that laugh. You have to imagine that they're laughing at right at the right points, and that they're, taking an intake of breath when you say something surprising.
Right,
And that's the
exactly.
best way to be able to react with the camera the way you would in a crowd.
Exactly. And that's hard though, right? Because it's not natural, as you say. But if you do build in those pauses, then it does come across more naturally. And I think not reading from a script. When I first started, I would have like a huge list of things that I wanted to say. And now I'm just like, just go with the bullet points, because it does come off more natural and people can relate to you more, if you are kind of more relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. And practice, right?
Mm.
Just these things take time to learn and get comfortable with. So, these have all been really amazing tips. And I want to encourage everyone to go ahead and join your Facebook group. It's an amazing group, very engaged, full of really amazing entrepreneurs. It's called Scaling Your Digital Business for Coaches and Consultants. And you will see Colleen in there. facing that camera on a regular basis. And so I applaud you for that, Colleen. I was so happy to have you on the show. The second we started to connect, I knew we were kindred spirits in how we wanted to support entrepreneurs and make sure that they get past the discomfort and can find that bravery to put themselves out there. So thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Remember, you got into business to help people solve a problem, and you can't do that if you stay hidden. So show up for them, show up for your business, and show up for yourself. We'll see you next time.